It's almost time for the first game in the second round of the college football playoffs. So I wanted to come on here and try to get done before it starts. That way I'm not distracting anybody from watching the game. But I want to do a top 10 countdown to close out the year. This is going to be my personal opinion of the best 10 current college football head coaches. Now, if I have to tell you what team any of these coaches coach, then you're not that big of a college football fan because you could be a casual fan and know who these coaches are just by name. Some of them coach really good teams, some of them don't, but I'll try to give some comments as I go as to why I have these coaches where I do. So without further ado, it's the top 10 current college football head coaches as we close out 2024 and look forward to 2025. Happy New Year to you as well, Keveron. And what is your prediction on the game tonight? I've got Penn State in a close game. Number 10 for me is Kirk Ferentz. If you look at his overall record, a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. He only wins about 7.5, 8 games a year, which is true. But they had 3 straight years where they were either bottom of the barrel or bottom five in America in offense and still managed to win 9 or 10 games. But you can go out there and struggle to score 15 points a game in this day and time when the game's all about offense and you can't score at all and you're still winning. That's a pretty good head coaching job, in my opinion. Hey there, Austin. Glad to have you here, especially when you look at Iowa's yearly recruiting rankings. They usually finish around 45th or 50th every year. So it's not like they're finishing, recruiting top 10 and just not winning. They're not. Where they finish in recruiting, considering they're behind almost every team in the Big Ten, they still win 8 or 9 games a year. I think that's pretty doggone good. Marcus, I am fantastic, as always. Austin, I am doing fantastic. Number 9 for me is Marcus Freeman. He took over the Notre Dame program, who had been in a rut for a really, really long time. Really, honestly, ever since Lou Holtz left, they had been, Notre Dame in name, but not Notre Dame in team outside of the one year they played for that fluky national championship. They were a, 8 or 9 win team in just a couple of seasons. Number 8 for me is Lane Kiffin. It's hard to not put Lane on the list because he wins everywhere he goes. Every year he coaches, he beats the teams he's supposed to beat, but he can't beat the teams he ain't supposed to beat. This year, when the season started, I thought they were a top 10 team, and they were on paper. And they went out there and had a couple of games they lost. They had no business losing. And I've always heard that the thing that holds Lane Kiffin back is Lane Kiffin can't win the big game. And this year, he kind of showed that. No, Austin, it ain't been a long day. I stay so busy, I don't even know what a long day means because I'm busy every day from sun up to sundown. So I ain't got time to sit and think about how long the day has been. Number 7 for me is Josh Heupel, or if you pronounce his name the correct way, Josh Heupel. I mean, you got to give him credit. He just won 30 games in 3 years at Tennessee, which is something that hasn't been done there since the Philip Fulmer days. So you can't discredit that. But at the same time, he's supposed to be an offensive genius. And when he was at Oklahoma, they had a good offense. When he was at Missouri, they had a good offense. When he was at Central Florida, they had a good offense. But Tennessee, he's been there 4 years, and 2022 was really the only season their offense was great. The other 3 years, it's just been average at best, and that's about all you can say about it. They say that the defense have figured it out. I'm not sure if that's what it is or not, but last year everybody blamed Joe Milton. Joe Milton is not there anymore, and their offense didn't look any better this year. And now they've got 6 wide receivers in the transfer portal. Almost every player they're losing is a wide receiver. I don't think that's a reflection on Josh Heupel. I think that's a reflection on the receivers coach. And when you lose almost all of your receivers and you lose all the receivers that have any kind of playing time at all, there's something wrong in the wide receiver room and you have to make changes. So far, he hasn't made any. Every coach that has left Tennessee since Josh Heupel's been there has left there on their own. And I think this year that's going to change to an extent. I don't see Josh Heupel firing anybody, but he's got Willie Martinez and Ellerby, whose current contracts expire January 31st. I think he'll just not renew their contracts so it doesn't look like he fired them. But the main issue they have is the wide receivers, and they play like a top 5 team at home, but on the road, they play like a top 50 team. All three of their losses this year came on the road. They've got to get that figured out. So you got to give them credit for winning 30 games in 3 years. But at the same time, you've got to get your wide receiver room fixed. And every single player, just about, that's made any kind of significant difference on the field has either been a transfer player or a player that was recruited by the previous coaching staff. So far, all the players that Heupel has recruited have just not gotten better. So you have to question the talent development of the program. At Austin, I try my best not to talk about my personal life on here, but thank you for asking. I try to keep that separate. Number 6 for me is James Franklin. I know a lot of people don't like James Franklin, and I've never met the guy, so I can't say whether I'd like him or not. But, he took over a Penn State program that was, struggling, and took them to be a top 10 team year in, year out on a regular basis. Plus, before Penn State, he won at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt won their bowl game last week. And this is their first winning season since James Franklin was the coach. But nobody talks about that. But James Franklin has Penn State in the top 10 every single year. So whether you like him or not, you have to give him credit for that. Again, 10 through 6 is Kirk Ferentz, Marcus Freeman, Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, and James Franklin. Number 5 is Kenny Dillingham, and he's very young and only been a head coach for a couple of years. But Arizona State was picked by everybody to either be the worst team in the Big 12 or the second worst team in the Big 12 this year. And he went out there and won the conference. And he's actually from that area, went to school in that area. So I don't think he's leaving anytime soon, if ever. So I think he's got a bright, bright future with Arizona State. Number 4 for me is Steve Sarkisian. The only thing that keeps him from being higher on the list is sometimes I think he outsmarts himself. I know that he struggled at Washington and USC, but he was a severe alcoholic back in those days. So I don't hold that against him. He's completely clean now, completely sober, and is a different man, a different coach altogether. But if you watch their game against Clemson, they were averaging 8-9 yards every time they ran the ball. Had I been Steve Sarkisian, I would have thrown 0 passes. There's no reason to throw the ball when the opposing team can't stop your running game. But Steve Sarkisian is so focused on, we got to be balanced, we got to be balanced, we got to be balanced, that he's throwing the ball when you have no business throwing the ball. Sometimes we make things more difficult than they should be, and there's no reason to throw the ball ever when you're getting 8 or 9 yards every time you run. So that's why Steve Sarkisian can't be higher than number 4. But you look at all the previous coaches at Texas, ever since Mack Brown left, and everyone they hired, they ended up firing because there's so much pressure in Austin that if you don't win and win right away, they run you off. And he's been able to come in there and shut the fans up and make them happy. Number 3 for me is Dan Lanning. And I know that Oregon, for the most part, has been a top 5 team annually for the better part of 20 years. But this is his first ever head coaching job at the collegiate level, and he went in there and didn't miss a beat and has them in the top 5 pretty much every year since he's been there. You got to give him credit for that. And then Honestly, the top two, I think, should be kind of obvious now who they are. You can put them whatever order you want to, and I'll tell you why I put them in the order I put them in. Number two for me is Kirby Smart. And the reason why he's not number one, let me go ahead and tell you who number one is, and I'll explain why I've got them Kirby two, and then Dabo Swinney number one. I started to put Dabo two and Kirby one, and that just shows how honest I am here on the channel, because everybody knows I despise the Georgia Bulldogs, and I won't say anything good about them ever. But when I'm being honest, I've still got to be honest, and Kirby Smart is number two, like it or not. But the reason why I've got him 1 and 2, let me explain. Kirby Smart, when he took over at Georgia, first of all, they were already a top 5, top 10 team. So he just took over a team that was already winning and just kept winning. Whereas Dabo Swinney took over a program that had probably only finished ranked, 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years. All through the Tommy West, Tommy Bowden days, if Clemson had an 8-win season, it was a good season. Dabo comes in, and in his first full season, he wins his side of the ACC. But ever since his third full season on, they've been one of the best 10 teams in America. He had to do that himself. They were not winning before he got there, whereas Georgia was already winning, so Kirby Smart just kept winning. And you can actually go back and look, and through the years, there hasn't been a lot of bad players say things about Kirby Smart, but you can find on occasion an article of where a player just didn't like Kirby for whatever reason and says something bad about him. But you can look at all the years Dabo's been there. He's been at Clemson way more years than Kirby's been at Georgia. And the media might say bad things about Dabo because for whatever reason the media hates Dabo. But you can't find one bad thing that any player will say about Dabo Swinney. Even the players that don't play, that lose their job for whatever reason, have nothing but respect for Dabo Swinney, which tells you the man you see on TV is the man he is behind the scenes. He's not one of those coaches that looks one way on TV and is totally different off camera. The man you see on TV is who Dabo is. He is genuine, and all his players respect him. All the coaches respect him. Nobody that coaches under him or plays for him will say anything bad about him, and you've got to respect that. Plus, with the way college football has changed, for 5 years, Dabo has been completely crushed by the media because for whatever reason, anything Dabo does and says, people twist it and turn it, or they'll take a 5-minute quote and take out 1 or 2 lines to make it appear like Dabo said something that Dabo didn't really say, and he just takes it and lets it roll right off his back. And every year you hear that Clemson's over with, Clemson's done, Clemson's no longer going to win, and then they'll come out, and what do? They win. And Dabo Swinney said before this past season, he said, I don't understand why people want me to change. I can't be somebody else. I'm me. I have to be me. And I respect that. In this day and time, you just don't see that a whole lot because people always feel pressure. And Dabo Swinney, don't let pressure, if it's there, get to him. The media doesn't bother him. He has said forever that, if he needs to use the transfer portal, he'll use it. But he's not going to use it just to say, hey, I use the portal. He's going to use it because he needs to use the portal. But yet people still say Dabo's against the portal, and that is completely false. But does that bother Dabo? Nope. He just keeps winning. So that was my opinion of the best 10 current college football head coaches. We wrap up the 2024 season. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. An umbrella was arrested for watching people in the shower. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like In pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.